delve into a different direction here on the show where we get perhaps a little more philosophical and more free thinking, shall we say. Jump into some wild, different ideas. And we want to start off by Rex telling us a really good story, as I recall, a bungee jumping story.
Yeah, okay, so this is kind of interesting. A long time ago, maybe, I don't know, a few years back or whatever, I had an opportunity to go hang out with some folks I know in Nepal. I got a lot of friends from Nepal and stuff, and I always thought that was one of the places on my list I always wanted to see, just for whatever reason. I just thought, wow, that's like an alien environment if you ever found one for a guy raised in North America, right? So I got a chance to go over there, and they got the world's second biggest bungee jump at the time, I believe. It was Bhotse Koshi, Nepal. And it's on the border of Tibet and Nepal, up there right on the northern border. And in the Himalaya foothills, or in the Himalaya mountains, across a huge gorge over the Bhotse Koshi River. And when I was talking about doing this, there's this chick I knew from Israel, and she was telling me, absolutely, positively, do not do it. You will permanently adjust your spirit in a bad way.
Really?
That's what she told me, right? And I'm kind of a scientific type guy at the time, especially, and I'm like, you know what? I think you're a little crazy. And I kind of giggled, and I'm like, well, so like, what do you mean? Like, how does that work? She's like, I don't know, but it's definitely going to change you. It does things to your soul, or it does things to your spirit that you'll never recover from. It'll permanently adjust you, and you probably should avoid doing things that put you so close to what makes your spirit think you're dying, but then you don't, because then it sets things in stone. And I thought, what the heck is she talking about?
So you had to check it out for yourself.
Well, yeah, I still did it, obviously, because I'm an adrenaline junkie in some respects. So I jumped off that thing twice. And there I did the canyon swing. That's, I think, was the world's biggest canyon swing. Maybe, I don't know if it still is, but if you don't know what that is, go ahead and YouTube that sucker, the canyon swing. That's pretty entertaining over Bhotse Koshi, Nepal.
So that's got to be just an incredible build-up up to the moment where you jump with a little bit of training, I would imagine.
No, that's the thing. When you always should research this stuff before you go to third world countries and just randomly jump off stuff with ropes on your feet, because I don't know anything about bungee jumping. I jumped off of other stuff, but not off of bridges with ropes tied around my feet, right?
Yeah.
It's different than like a fast rope or something else, right? So I'm like, yeah, it'll be easy. I'll just jump off this bridge and the rope will make me not die. So my conclusion was, I won't die, therefore it's safe, right? Well, it probably won't die.
Putting a lot of faith in that bungee cord.
People do die from bungee jumping. But my conclusion was that, and which was, it was probably one of the more stupid things I've done, actually. There should be training for that. More psychological training, like knowing what to expect is going to happen. So a lot of the fear and a lot of the anxiety is erased when that happens. And also just gearing yourself physiologically, because you get a whiplash, dude. When you bungee jump, like your eyeballs almost pop out of your head, your spine almost disconnects from your brain cord and from your brain. It's like a terrible deal. It's a lot of G-forces, and unless you got the proper posture, dude, I mean, it's going to hurt you.
But yet a lot of tourist places, not just in third world countries, but around the world, people just line up on the bridge and they tie you up and say, well, you're next, good luck, and they throw them off.
And a lot of waivers are signed first, too. I signed the waiver. It's like, I wonder why they're doing this. Oh, it's just a normal waiver. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it is normal. I wonder how many people tried suing you guys, But no, it was incredible. It was amazing. I'm glad I did it in a way, because it's different than other things that you'd think would be maybe more scary, but it's just something. I mean, that's a deep canyon too. It's huge. It's a long ways down. You fall for like a while before that thing starts to grab tension on you. And yeah. So anyways, I did the bungee jump, and I was drunk with adrenaline for 3 days afterwards.
Wow.
And I mean, like, or what I thought was adrenaline, probably whiplash too in your brain, like just everything. Your body is very stressed out from that. But the question is here, and I thought this was an interesting discussion. I was trying to figure out why this chick said that your soul or your spirit would be adjusted from doing something that brought you close to death.
And how did that play out in your experience?
Well, I mean, I'm so messed up from other things anyways. I probably almost died 1 million times from other things. So I don't know if that blends in with the mix. But when I analyze it scientifically and you think about it, it does kind of make sense analytically. And what she said there. If you look at so the brain is an incredibly complicated computer system, okay? And they're finding out now, and this was not quite yet in the textbooks when I went to college and did my biology stuff. I did a couple different studies there, but biology was one of them. And like epigenetics was just still really cutting edge, and it still is right now. The infinite complexity to the DNA code, what they call junk DNA. No one knows what the heck that was for, because it's not defining what a protein's going to look like. Therefore, it's junk because it's not being used. No, maybe there's other stuff, other information. It does not all have to be protein encoding information to be useful. So they're finding out, and there's a lot of evidence, and a lot of guys argue about this one way or the other, but that there's genetic memory, okay? So, for example, let's go like this. I like this story. Let's say Grandpa TiborasaurusRex 600 years ago in the old country, okay? He's up in the mountains with the trees, and he's got his Volashka axe or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And he's up there hiking, and he's looking for honey or whatever they did back in them days. I don't know what they did. That's what I imagine probably he did, back in the day. And a grizzly bear comes out and attacks him, and he's got an axe. And I survived after, he had his kid afterwards, which was, where I come from, right? And so my grandpa survives a grizzly bear attack with an axe. All that stuff that he learned during that grizzly bear attack biologically, I'm talking about the knobs and settings like on your mixing board there, your body is going to freeze frame that moment in time right immediately when you discover that you just beat the grizzly bear in an attack. Like, holy crap, I just survived something incredibly traumatic. So there's certain chemicals in the mind and the body. This is me ranting, just based on the epigenetic studies I did. And it would be cool to do a thesis on this if I ever went to grad school and did stuff like that on biology. But I would like to think, and I would like to do a study on this, that all these different settings biochemically are recorded, and there's a snapshot of that taken in your brain. Boom. Okay, grizzly bear attack, super traumatic. It releases all adrenaline, adrenochrome, all this weird stuff that does all kinds of weird stuff to the body, right? It gives you superpower and you can fight the bear. But at the same time, that chemical triggers another reaction where your brain decides, okay, we're going to make a new genetic code, saving these settings, these combat settings to repel bear attacks in the future.
Because this is important. That's important information.
Yes, because you just survived something terribly traumatic, right?
A near-death experience.
Yes, a near-death experience. So the settings are recorded epigenetically. It's encoded in the DNA so that the next time you have this same biochemical response to something that surprises the hell out of you in the bushes that's hairy and growling, that is dephosphorylated. I think that's what they call it, where they got an actual chemical group clamped on like a vice grips on your DNA molecule. And that's preventing certain sections of DNA from being read and used. So genetically, when those things are opened up, there's an enzyme deal that comes in there, knocks off that little vice grip chemical, if you will, and then all of a sudden it can use that section of DNA. So when those settings are reached, the brain says, okay, boom, it unlocks that epigenetic memory, and you have just come through a new experience in life. And all that stuff, that whole flashback chemically of your grandpa fighting the grizzly bear automatically is there, ready to rock and roll, so that you don't have to fumble around for that first 12 seconds while the bear's mauling you, right?
So the hypothesis here is that this genetic coding will hold true with multiple and various near-death experiences.
Yes.
So even like bungee jumping.
And bungee jumping, yep. Or another, a good example too is like there's certain rites of passage. You look at cultures from like South America, they will like put hooks through your nipples and make you jump off a diving board or whatever it is up in the trees, out in the jungle, right? Mm-hmm. And it hurts and everyone hoots and hollers and they blow weird colored smoke at you. And they do this whole ritual. Where does this ritual come from? It's simulating some kind of experience that's a rite of passage because they want to unlock certain kind of what they call ghost power or spiritual energy or whatever. That's their word for it. Science might call it epigenetic memory is now unleashed. And now that person has gone through a rites of passage situation to where now they are a stronger person in certain respects. But also they're never going to look at the world the same after you jump off a diving board with hooks through your body, right?
True story, man.
Yeah. So it's like I seen on National Geographic when I was little. It's kind of traumatic for me. I got the halfways epigenetic unleashing there. But with the bungee jumping, I'm thinking that's probably what she was getting at, because cultures have known this forever. Like dudes who have war flashbacks, it kind of changes them, like for life, right? Or people that have children. When they have that first children, like the emotional chemical, like, wow, and they're crying because their first baby was born. They're just like, oh my gosh. And all that stuff released unleashes a certain thing in the body where epigenetically, boom, this whole new set of criteria and priorities is unleashed. And now you turn from being a wild, young, like adolescent type guy who's just wild as hell, running all over doing crazy stuff, to a responsible person who's like, I need to make sure my kids survive. I need to provide for them. I can't do risky stuff. And it changes people biologically. Like if you've known people when they pass that deal, like they change, they're a different dude. And so that's a very good example of childbearing or rearing a child as a father or a mother, right? And so with bungee jumping, I'm thinking that's why people do stupid things like this, is because they're trying to unleash things to where like, okay, but with bungee jumping, it's kind of a dead end scenario because like, okay, so you jump off a bridge that's like thousands of feet in the air, and you see clouds beneath you, and you see the cliffs on both sides just going up 150 miles an hour, and you're pretty sure you're going to die. Every warning light in your body's going off at the same time. The windshield wipers, the horns beeping, radio turns on full blast, the blowers are going, the doors are slamming on the car, right? That's you jumping off a bungee jump for the first 1 second. Like, you don't even know what to say. You just total severe 1000% panic mode just for a second there until you feel the tension in the rope. Okay. But I mean, like, but where does that end though? See, like you just convinced yourself you're committing suicide by jumping off a bridge. And then, so you went through the epigenetic passage of suicide and then you didn't die. So what the heck does that unleash? Maybe that's what she was talking about. I don't know what it was.
Do you think that ties into like post-traumatic stress disorders?
Well, I would imagine it would certainly trigger stuff like that. I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, and that's kind of what that is too, epigenetically. Like if you have like my first boss was a really cool guy. Actually, you know him, Lew. Remember Ray? We'll just call him Ray for now.
Oh, of course.
Yep, and he was a World War II vet, Third Army under Patton. And he got blown up once and shot, and he had steel bones in his arms and steel plates in his skull. Just an amazing guy. But it totally adjusted his perspective. And I mean, the PTSD, I'm sure that if you have grenades and stuff going off next to your head and your buddy gets killed by a phosphorus grenade, like Ray's buddy did, and was like terrible experience for him, you know, that's going to permanently adjust your biology. And so when you have a car backfire the next day, it biologically takes you back to what that simulates. So there's different stimuli in the brain that trigger this.
And different experiences yield different, shall we say, fracturing of the spirit or fracturing of the soul. I think there's something it also has to do with intent, because you made a real good point where you jump off the bridge, you've convinced yourself that you're committing suicide, and that does something.
Well, you know, for myself, the way I jumped off the bridge when I did the bungee jumping, and I was with these extreme sports dudes from Peru and France and all over the world when I did this, right? And they're all like doing the hand signals, and they got their GoPros strapped on their face and the whole 9 yards. I mean, they're like extreme sports guys. They're putting on their Spacebook.coms and everything. And I was with them, and I decided I was going to be the first guy because I don't want to watch all these people jump off and then like be scared ahead of time. So I'm always the first one to do something like that. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to be the first guy to jump off this thing here, just because it's easier that way. So they were roping me up, and I was pretty nervous, you know, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And then you're standing on the edge, and you get on this flimsy like board that's sticking off this like swinging cable bridge, like thousands of feet over this canyon. You look at the river down there, dude, and it's like a mile away or something. It's huge. It seems like it's forever. And it's like, okay, well, I'm looking down and I'm actually getting scared. So I'm just going to look up slightly. And I put myself in a place where I'm just jumping off of the curb on the sidewalk onto the street. It's like a 6-inch drop. And I told, all right. And then the guy counted to 3. And once my legs made the push, I tried to recoil from it. There ain't nope, it's too bad. Like, you just jumped off. And when they videotape it for you when you do the thing, and they give you the CD and all this, or what, DVD or whatever. And I look at it, and I appeared to be pretty cool from the outside. Like, I'm smiling. Hey, guys, all right, I'm going to jump off the thing. And then I boing, jump off, no problem, right? Well, all those extreme sports guys behind me, they were like, I was surprised. There's a lot of editing that happens in extreme sports videos because they edit out the part where there's snot coming out of their nose because they're bawling so hard before they go. Like literally like really scared dudes. And I mean, that's a really scary thing to do is the bungee jump I heard is one of the more scary deals to do, especially that one because it's so big. Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of entertaining. But I got asked the question by where was that chick from? I don't remember, Amsterdam or someplace. And she was like, how are you so cool when you did that? I'm like, I wasn't cool. I was totally scared. Well, you didn't look like you were scared. And I'm like, well, I was 100% scared. That's for sure. But I think a lot of it has to do with the mindset of like when you're doing it, you just got to convince yourself you're going to be doing something different. And the problem is like adolescent brains, like when you're talking about 17, 18-year-old kids, like when you're going to send them off the front of a boat in World War II to take the beach, that part of the brain of being scared has not totally been developed yet because they need to be risk takers at that point to be able to go out of the house and establish a new neighborhood out in the middle of the woods where the bears are, right? So that stuff ain't from the mercy of God, the designer who made it or whoever, right? Like that stuff is not cemented in place till you hit like 27, 30 on a man, right? So when I did this bungee jump, that was the first time I was old enough to actually be like pretty darn scared to do something like, okay, this is really scary ahead of time. And it's because my brain was like going through all the stuff. So I had to short circuit that deal and rewire it. Nope, I'm not jumping off a bridge. I'm jumping off the curb. That's what I told myself. That's how I coped with it. But on young people, it's a lot easier because they don't foresee the frontal cortex ain't totally cemented in place yet. And they can't totally formulate all the consequences after that might occur. That's where the fear comes from, is you recognize all the question marks that exist. Am I going to snap my neck off? My eyeball's going to pop out? Is this going to like hurt me long term? What's going to happen?
So, with all that being said, Mr. Rex, Miss Kacie, what else do you guys think could be buried in our DNA?
Oh, man. That's a good question. And that's where a lot of, people get interested in their ancestry and stuff. But really, it's universal history if you look at the struggles people have gone through throughout time. So, a Chinese person has been in a war back in the day, and I'm sure a German person's been in a war back in the day, too. So, I mean, you're going to have a lot of very common experiences, very similar. But as far as family lines go, it's interesting how things are inherited in the family, right?
Yeah, I was going to comment on that as well. There's so much that can be inherited just from a family, not just, what you look like, but... you can be an alcoholic because your mother or father was an alcoholic. You're more susceptible to become one. There's levels mentally that you inherit. There's levels physically that you inherit. You're more prone to obesity if you have two obese parents. So there's that too. But not even just that stuff. Your general, not necessarily your idealism is genetic, but...
But there is a genetic path of least resistance, it seems like, right?
Yeah.
To where we're just kind of... if we're operating in that inner cortex of the brain, right? Which is what a lot of people call the reptile area, which is what the reptiles have, right? In the middle there, where you have like just compulsive behavior, like... I need chemical to squirt by eating food. I need chemical to squirt by mating with another lizard. That's what people call reptilian brain, right? If you look in a psychology book or anatomy book, right? And then there's the mammalian part of the brain, and then there's other parts of the brain that give higher complex thought. But if people, and we can choose to operate more on a compulsive level too, if we're just falling back into those habits of what seems right at the moment I'm going to do. That's the reptilian cortex of the brain, right? And so, if we're operating in that frequency range, if you will, of the brain, and this is not cuckoo stuff, this is normal anatomy type stuff. It's in the book. You can read it. But you're going to be more prone to follow that epigenetic pathway of your ancestors. So you have families of guys who are just like, they drink beer with their shirts off in the front yard and punch people and yell at people. They must have come from some rough neighborhood where like the only way to cope was to like drink beer, and they got sweaty from it, so they took their shirt off. And then every time someone came around, they acted super aggressive like a barking dog because that would scare away the threats. And for whatever reason, like that pattern of behavior has helped them to survive over the years. And I don't want to be an evolution guy in that sense, but no, it really is recorded in the brain. Or certain people do other things, to survive. And so a lot of that family has... Dude, like one time I went to East Europe and I was looking at all the castles, right? And like a big part of my family is from East Europe. And I was always curious, like, oh man, that'd be kind of interesting. It's right in the crossroads of Europe there. You got the Middle East, you got Europe, you got Asia, you got Africa. They all, when they're going to invade somebody, they're always going over that territory. And when you're going over that territory, you rape and pillage everybody. You burn their houses down, you kill them, you torture them for fun on your way through. That's what armies do, unfortunately, when they're turned loose with no one watching with video cameras and lawyers. Before they had lawyers, okay? That's what armies used to do before lawyers. They need to get more lawyers over there in Syria, man. They'd be fighting a lot more nicely. I got to tell you what. Oh, but what was I talking about?
The castles.
Oh, the castles. Yeah. So I'm looking at all these rocks. I'm like, holy smokes, dude. This wall is 30 feet thick of solid boulders. And it's on top of a mountain. And it had to have been a lot of sweating to do this. Like, I know how sweaty I get from carrying one rock like 10 feet in my yard. You know what I mean? Like... And then it dawned on me, and I'm looking at all the huge fortress. Like, we went to the Castle Spiš, and that's kind of on the border of Slovakia, Ukraine, and over there in eastern Slovakia area. And that's where they film a lot of these movies, you know, with castles in them, because it's a huge one up on a mountain. I'm just looking at it like, wow, these people must have been really scared that people are going to be mean to them. So they had to build this giant damn thing up on top of this mountain with all these rocks to feel like they could survive. And so... it makes a lot of sense when I look at my old man, for example, who inherited that bloodline. He's very much of a musician because in the medieval ages, right? I mean, what are you going to do all winter? It sucks outside. You got your meat piled up for the winter. You got your grain and all your crops right, and you're just sitting there. How are you going to survive? How are you not going to go insane? So you get a super laid-back personality. You play the guitar. You're an artist. You do all this stuff, and then you survive that way. But then when it comes down to fighting, yeah, you build a pretty good fortress. And when it comes down to politics, you're pretty laid back because, like, who's in charge today? Like, I have conversations with my old man once in a while, and I get all bent out of shape about the political situation because I'm, like, trying to, like, oh, no, we need to do this or write this guy a letter. And his attitude, and it's not always this way, but it's kind of like, you know what? It's always been corrupt. That's like the normal part of history. Of course it's corrupt. They're politicians. They're the king. Of course, that's their job, to be corrupt as hell and try to get you, you know? And so I'm thinking, okay, so coming from that part of the world epigenetically, he's inherited this laid-back attitude, like, okay, that's how they survive, dude. Like, all the guys that tried to survive the Mongolian hordes and all these different outfits coming from the Huns and all these different outfits coming through to kill everybody, they just kind of let them walk by and like, okay, you want to eat all my farm food? Okay, well, I'm going to sit over here and smoke a cigarette. You guys let me know when you're done destroying my farm and I'll rebuild it again, you know? Just don't kill my wife that I hid over there in the creek in a foxhole, you know? So, and that's how you survive. They just don't really care about politics or whatever. And you get into England, and it's a whole different epigenetic set because you got people who like survived on an island, relatively protected, but they wanted order. They wanted law and order. They wanted things to be done clean and properly. And they developed a very sophisticated kind of like culture almost when you look at their interesting history they've had, because of just the environmental pressures on them caused them to have to kind of do that to survive. Like, hey, we all got to be on the same page if we're going to live on an island here. Okay. And so, or Japan's the same way too. Very obedient to the ruler. They've had like one of the oldest dynasties in the world. Like it goes way back. Like that, like the guy in World War II, that family line goes way back because they inherited this super loyalty deal towards whoever the leader is, you know, and they had their skirmishes and their fights with amongst the different shoguns and whatever. But all in all, I mean, the culture reflects the environmental pressure that's put on it.
And individuals are a product of history and their culture, and you should do a doctorate or a thesis paper on how the genetics play into that, because it's fascinating, man.
It is fascinating. I don't like the math part or the, what do you call it? The detail work of the genetics classes, memorizing all that stuff, dude. That was hard, man. I mean, I did good in that class, but it's interesting. I'm too much of an artist though, see? Mm-hmm. So I got the artist part kicking in saying, I'll just be the guy that throws the ideas out there. And then someone else can actually do the research and that stuff.
All the paper pushing.
I'll sit in my yard and drink a tea and look at the bird chirping and play my guitar, and they'll figure it out. But I'll come up with crazy ideas all day long, you bet.
It's just fascinating stuff, and it makes me wonder what else is buried in our DNA, because a couple decades ago, we didn't even know about DNA, and now we're trying to unravel all the coding and try to untangle all the mysteries that are there. And it's up to our imaginations, I'd like to think.
You know, there's a lot more going on to this, too, as well, Lou. Although DNA wasn't through scientific method discovered until like 1950 or whatever it was, 1951 by Watson and Crick and them other folks there. The people had imagined and wrote about the DNA molecule and even described as double helix structure back in the 1800s before they had any kind of idea using chemistry or microscopes or any of this stuff to really be able to figure out the biochemistry and identify the molecule. So it's interesting, is there hidden technical knowledge hidden away?
Yeah, and to bring it back to the tribes that would do like the hook hanging things and, any kind of near-death experience, rites of passage, we know about that deeper knowledge, and we have known about it since our ancestors have been here doing their stuff.
And that might be very well where a lot of the religious and weird cultic practices come from, is people trying to randomly stick keys into slots and see if this key works. Does this key work? And they're doing all kinds of radical stuff trying to unlock that information. I don't know if it's all epigenetic, or it could be. I mean, it could be when you're talking about the spiritual realm of information flowing, or it could be that epigenetically you can unlock the other parts of your brain that pick up on different frequencies too. Because like radio waves, we can see those based on crude equipment, but the more sophisticated equipment, like the super complex human brain, that's very subtle. You're not going to see that on like stuff made out of copper and silicon. You're going to see it out of the thing called your mushy brain. So it's a different piece of equipment. So I don't know where that spiritual information comes from. A lot of people suspect it's coming from like demonic or angelic forces, or like good spirits or bad spirits, or from a different dimension, or aliens from outer space. There's a lot of different ideas on where a lot of this information is recorded and transferred. And when people pray, I mean, who are they praying to, right? They're praying to God. Well, where's he at? So it's the mysteries of the universe, and I find it, dude, like if a person's so bored they got to play Pokemon, and I'm sorry for everyone, do you play Pokemon? You do? Okay, I'll be nice to Casey here. But as far as Pokemon goes, like, dude, like the universe is so infinitely complex and mysterious. Like, how in the heck could we be wrapped up in Mario Brothers or something? I think that was it's like, well, the king runs off with his T-bone steak. He throws you like an old like fish head that's rotting and says, here, you distract yourself with this. I'll be over here, That's my opinion. All right, go ahead.
In defense of the Pokemon, I play it because it helps me walk more. It gets me outside more.
No, I understand it.
I would come home from work and like hang out in my house. So it actually gets me more involved with the world than it does take me away from the world.
And I'll come to her defense here too, because if you consider, especially in the generation that you're a part of, right? This generation, the millennial generation, has already been integrated with technology. So I understand that the millennials, they kind of inherited this technotronic age. They've been fused with the matrix, if you will, through technology. And that's a good way to maybe enter into the physical realm again. So I can understand that, and if that's the goal, and that's why a lot of people like it. I got some friends who do it. I just like to make fun of it because I'm a dinosaur. Back in my day, we used to go for walks because we liked thinking about epigenetics and UFOs and stuff.
But we can't deny that there are bigger energies and bigger powers out there, stuff that is inconceivable to our current imaginations and things that are behind the veil, if you will.
Hey, Lou, you got to put us down for dark matter on the next one.
Ooh,
I'm going to
dark
complain
matter.
about dark matter,
That'd be
how
a good
hilarious
one.
it is to me. I ain't saying it don't exist. You'll see. You'll see.
Oh, I've heard your feelings about dark matter.
He's heard my rant a few times.
It's pretty great, actually.
Okay.
But there are bigger things at play beyond the human imagination, and whether it's interdimensional or a larger, bigger magnet in the sky, whatever you want to call it, it's just fascinating, and it's part of the human experience trying to unravel that. And whether you do it scientifically or whether you do it through drugs or through religion or...
Those are different languages of interpretation of the same stuff that we're all in the middle of, whatever it is.
Exactly. And it's...
Some might be more constructive than others, but yeah, we'll leave that to the user.
It's all different ways of peeling out the layers of existence, and it's fascinating stuff. So with that in mind, we were talking about putting keys into places that don't make them fit. I think that'll be a nice way to tie into our next feature, Rex's Bible Studies.
Oh, man.
And it's coming up right after a short break here on the Rex Reviews podcast.